last night with the Phillies getting the victory over the Mariners 12-7. That's just what that team needed. That team needed last night in more ways than one from a lot of different guys. Obviously, the weekend was what it was for the Phillies, splitting two in D.C. More so the news with Zach Wheeler and him having the blood clot in his shoulder and then getting the procedure done yesterday. They needed a type of game where they just went out there and dominated and just took apart another postseason team in the Seattle Mariners, and just to kind of relax and let everything kind of roll down the back after the weekend, the road trip that they had. It was a long road trip. Started out great, and obviously by the time we got to the end of that weekend in D.C., all of us had kind of collectively lost our minds about the Phillies. They needed that one in more ways than one, and one of the big ways they needed that one was from starting pitching and from Ranger Suarez specifically. Getting that start out of Suarez has the opportunity to calm some of us down. And I was really interested to see the feedback I got from yesterday's show, because a lot of people were like, Ray, you were just down terribly yesterday. You were in a bad way yesterday with the way you felt about the Phillies. And I thought entirely justified. Zach Wheeler, the idea of potentially not having him for the rest of the season, and we don't know, there still is no timetable following the procedure he had done yesterday to remove that blood clot. We still don't have the time frame for him, but I assume I'm going to operate on the assumption that you're not seeing him for the rest of the season, just given how close we are to the postseason and how long you would expect that for him to recover from it. So I was in a bad way yesterday, and I'm still not in a great way today. I'll be honest with you. It was a lot of fun to watch last night's game. I don't want to pour cold water on what was a fun evening at the ballpark. I'm still not in a great place, but I had so many people like, Ray, you really just gave up that easily? Like, you just surrendered that easily with regards to the Phillies. It took one thing and you just packed up the ball and walked home pretty much with the way you felt about the season. So I'm curious for people after last night, if that was the calming presence you needed from the Phillies, if that was something that made you realize, hey, maybe there is a bigger picture to this, maybe there is still a shot for this team, given the fact that you saw the Bats do what they did and you got a glimpse at the Ranger Suarez that we were promised for the first half of the season and quite frankly have seen for quite a long time here in Philadelphia. I haven't quite gotten there. I do think, though, yesterday we teased out this idea in the 1 o'clock hour, and I want it to really be where you weigh in at 610-632-0975. And I'm going to ask Brendan Gunn a similar question, because Kevin Cooney was sitting here next to me yesterday, and we had a nice back and forth late in the show about basically, Ray, what do you need to see to be back? Like, when we hit September 28th and that final regular season game is played, and maybe we see Nolan Hoffman again for a couple innings, and they just do whatever they need to for game 162, and we come on the air September 29th. Likely we'll be talking about Eagles-Buccaneers. But on top of that, what will we be saying about the postseason? And to me, what I need to see the rest of the way was last night was emblematic of that. That was what I needed to see. Now, I don't expect them to score 12 runs every night, but to get the start that you got from Ranger Suarez, for him to have the velocity back up, and I'm not talking about him throwing mid-90s. I'm just talking about it looking better velocity-wise than it has over the last month. The fact that he was getting swings and misses, the whiff rate was there, the ability to miss barrels, that when he's at his best, those things are the really calling cards of what he does out there on the mound. Seeing all that from him, again, one start. But it makes you start to think, okay, if you could get this Ranger Suarez back, if you can get Ranger Suarez close to the level that it was in the first half of the season, now I have two starting pitchers I feel good about. Well, now you're starting to build a postseason rotation back. And he did that against the Mariners lineup that is absolutely nothing to sneeze at. And from the offensive side of things, you got production from the big money guys. Listen, up and down the lineup, everyone except Bohm had 2 hits in the game yesterday. You look up and down that lineup, what you got, though, specifically from Trey Turner, from Bryce Harper. You can mix in Schwarber in there, mix in Castellanos, guys that you're paying to be the big guys in this lineup. You got production from them. And that is basically what you need the rest of the way to feel like they have a shot. Not 12 runs every night, because the fact the Mariners get 7, I think there are a couple pitchers in there that maybe we won't have to worry about taking the mound in many games going forward. The reason the Mariners end up with 7 in that game. But for them to get the production from the big bats and for Ranger Suarez to look more like the Ranger Suarez we've come to expect, that is the first step towards it. I'm curious, though, for us to really sit here September 29th, leading into the postseason, having a conversation about, wow, this team can compete for a World Series. What do you need to see in the next 6 weeks? And you could chime in on that 610-632-0975, because last night was emblematic of what I need to see. I need to see pretty much 2 starters that are not named Christopher Sanchez emerge as steadying presences in this rotation going forward. Now, you could say, Ray, do you believe in Taijuan yet? Taijuan keeps us up to the end of the season. We might have to have a conversation about that guy in the rotation. We already probably should be having that conversation right now. But I need 2 starting pitchers. Maybe Taijuan's one of them. 2 starting pitchers to emerge alongside Sanchez. And I need to see the big money bats show you why they're paid what they're paid. They're a nearly $1 billion lineup. I need to see nearly $1 billion worth of production coming from these guys in the last 6 weeks for me to sign on here in September 29th and say, hey, yeah, that's a team that can go do it. So I took a lot of time to think back to what we were talking about at the 1 o'clock hour yesterday with Kevin of, Ray, you're down horrendous this morning. How do you get yourself back into feeling good about this baseball team? You can't buy all the way back in just because they score a dozen runs one night and Ranger Suarez looks good. But that could be emblematic of what you need to see the rest of the season to feel like, yes, this team might be without Zach Wheeler. We don't have a timeline, but I operated the assumption that he's not coming back this season, because it is just a wildly unrealistic and unfair expectation for me to place on a guy that had a blood clot to say, yeah, you got to be back by the end of the season. So knowing that, what do I need to see from the rest of the guys in this organization? Last night is emblematic of what I need to see from them for me to believe come September 29th. Consistency's been the issue. We're going to see that time and time again. But I'm curious. I set those 2 pillars of what I need from this team the rest of the way to buy back in and think that they're a World Series contender. I really need, and it's those top 3 in the lineup. I know everyone's like, wow, the bottom of the lineup's really producing. It's great. Yeah, it leads to games where you score 12 runs. If some version of what you've gotten from Harper and Turner last night is the version you're getting the rest of the way, I can feel good about that. And later on in the show, I want to dive in specifically to those 2 players and their time together in Philadelphia, and maybe a little bit of a history lesson that would lend to what you need to see from them the rest of the season. But my 2 pillars, 2 starting pitchers that emerge as the steadying presence, and the guys that have about $1 billion committed to them for the duration of their contracts in Philadelphia, produce to the level in which we know they're capable of on a consistent basis. Is it a lot to ask for? Sure, but it's a lot to ask to replace Zach Wheeler. Now, I'm curious. Brendan Gunn producing the show. When you look at what you need to know, because yesterday we got a chance to talk with you about it, but I know my woes over what I felt about the season kind of took over in the way yesterday's show went. What do you need to see to sit here on September 29th looking into a postseason and say, yeah, this team can compete for World Series?
Yeah, I mean, you started with the Ranger thing and you need 2 pitchers. To me, it starts and it ends with the big money bats that you mentioned later on. Even when you had a Zach Wheeler and a Christopher Sanchez in the rotation, and arguably the best rotation in starting baseball, a lot of people weren't all the way bought in on this team. Why? Because the big money bats were not coming through. To me, that's always how they're going to live and die in the postseason. If those guys can come through for a month in a row, you don't need, I don't want to say you don't need a Zach Wheeler. That sounds ridiculous. But if you can go out there and get 6 innings out of your starting pitcher last night, like you did from Ranger, a little bit plus, and then he fell off towards the end of it. If you can go out there and get that, get to the later inning in the bullpen, get a Strom in there, get a Kirkering in there, get Duran in there, you'll be all right if you can put up 6 runs in a postseason game. To me, it is the bats. It's always going to be the bats. Now, can they stay hot for a month in a row? I don't know. One night, 21 hits last night, it feels good, but I don't know if I can see that night in, night out, night in, night out. 1 series, 2 series, yes. Until they do it, right. I don't know if I'm going to believe in it.
Well, that's what we're asking for. We're asking for something. We're projecting out what we need to see, what we need to ask for, what we really want to see with our 2 eyes before we buy into saying that this team can do it, because there was definitely an expectation reset. What happened over the weekend, what we found out with the news with Zach Wheeler, reset the expectation. The only question for me is how I can get back there. And Kevin asked that yesterday. I thought about it a lot yesterday. There were a lot of people that thought that I was over the top yesterday in my doomsdaying of where this team was going.
Do you feel better today? A little bit.
Not really.
No?
No. I mean, I feel better about Ranger Suarez specifically.
You got a little bit more pep in your step.
Yeah, well, listen, I'm not the type of guy that like watches a 12-7 win and is like, well, what's it going to mean? Like I like to enjoy as it happens, and I enjoyed watching last night. I enjoy watching that version of Ranger Suarez that made him one of my favorite players on this team. I enjoy when Bryce Harper is making people in the second deck have to look out. Like, I enjoy that stuff. Can it get me all the way back in one day? No. But I think that's why there's a little pep in the step today. But I think last night was emblematic of what I need.
In a perfect world, you go into the postseason, you have a Zach Wheeler, you have the best rotation, but the bats aren't hot. Or you go in with a lack of the best rotation in baseball, but the bats are hot. What are you picking out of those two options? The hot bats or the better rotation?
Probably the better rotation.
Okay.
Probably. That's the
fair.
thing is, though, I don't think I have, like, the ability to have that better rotation I don't think is there. So I guess with this group right now, I would have to go with the hot bats. All right. Coming up, I'm curious for you at 610-632-0975. How do you get those expectations back following the Wheeler news? Because I believe last night's emblematic of how I could get myself back into talking about this team as a contender. And two guys that were, I'll use the word again, emblematic, but emblematic of an offseason that did not bear a lot of fruit, is one keeping his job and one losing his job. Coming out of last night. Hand up. Might have been a bad call by me. We'll explain next. I'm Ray Dunn, taking through middays here on 97.5 The Fanatic. Hey, it's Ray Dunn from the Midday Show. Thank you so much for watching our content. If you want more videos, you can click right here. Or how about you subscribe right here so you stay in the know on all that's coming from 97.5 The Fanatic.